I can see your elbows, but not mine.
I also end up usually zooming in on me more than you.
Okay, so yeah, because we're not the same exact sized up, but like,
Yeah.
And now we would be because you can see the bottom of my elbows.
Now we would be, yeah.
We think that's good.
I think this is good. In the box. Okay, ready.
This podcast is brought to you in part by Dragon Shield. Use code PLAYTOWIN5 at the affiliate link down below for 5% off to help support the show.
Oh, hey! Welcome to the Play to Win podcast, where we talk about winning in cEDH. I'm Cam.
And I'm Dylan. This week we are talking about losing life and how to make that good in cEDH. What's the name of this topic?
How to Necropotence or Ad Nauseam in cEDH.
Or Peer into the Abyss, or Bolas Citadel, or Gwenum, or how to pay life for lots of cards in cEDH.
How to use your life as a resource in cEDH.
Boom, I like that there. That's
way better.
I like that we're coming to that right now.
Yeah,
That's what this is about.
Oh man, I should add another card to our list then.
We'll have one or two. What was the actual question? This is a question from our Patreon initially that we are making into a podcast?
That's correct, Dylan. Yeah, so Rocky Hall messaged us and was asking us about like how to basically Necropotence or Ad Nauseam. And what he means by this is just like, when you're drawing 30 cards, like what's the strategy to deploy those 30 cards? How are we winning the game with those cards? What's the strategy with Necropotence? Do we just draw 30 cards right away? Is there a better way we could be doing this? So we wanted to take like all of these types of cards, the black cards that make you lose a lot of life but draw you most of your deck so that you can win the game with them. We wanted to kind of like really examine these cards and figure out which ones are the best, what to look out for when you're playing these cards, how to play them, and how to win the game after they've resolved.
Yeah, I love this topic. I love these styles of cards. Necropotence and Ad Nauseam are some of my favorite cards in cEDH. This is a style of play that I really like, so I'm super excited to talk about this stuff.
Me too.
Should we talk about really quick? This one's an obvious one, but why is paying life for cards so good?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
It's kind of self-explanatory, but most of these cards were built for a different type of Magic the Gathering. They were built for a format in which you start with 20 life. So paying life as a resource is a little bit more of a cost in a format like that where you have 20 life. Whereas for us, cEDH Commander, we have 40 life. So already that's double the amount of life that we were initially intended the cards to be printed for. So all of the paying life for card advantage cards in Commander are like strictly twice as good as they are in other formats,
with
right?
the exception of Peer into the Abyss, because I think that's the only one that was printed with Commander in mind, and even then that says you lose half of your life rounded down, so it's always going to be, or at least it's always going to feel like a large cost like all of these other spells are, but otherwise like it was normally a 1 life for 1 card rate that you would get, or the mana value for the card rate that you would get in something like even Dark Confidant too.
Just Magic in general, the cost of 1 life for a card is just a good rate. Even in 20 life formats, that's just a good exchange. You paying 1 life to gain 1 more card, in most situations that's going to be worth it, and in cEDH and Commander it feels like it's more than that.
It's even more than that. I mean, if you go through Magic's history, like both Yawgmoth's Bargain and Necropotence were absolutely broken cards in the original standard formats that they were in, and they didn't even have win conditions like Underworld Breach or Thassa's Oracle. The original Yawgmoth's Bargain deck played Blaze as their win condition, which is so fucking bad looking at today's standards.
Yeah, it is kind of funny. So that's the main reason that exchanging 1 life for a card is just really good, but also like the gameplay reason is putting 30 cards in your hand not only allows you to put a win together, but it oftentimes can allow you to put multiple wins together or a protected win together. So all you have to do is cleverly resolve your big draw spell at an appropriate time, and then maybe a little bit later be able to win the game because you've seen 30 cards or whatever, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's all at once too, which is a rate that like Heuristics study and a lot of the other long-term perpetual card draw spells just really can't keep up with. And it's 1 spell on the stack, so that way you don't have to overfeed a lot of these cards, although maybe you do trying to get to some of them because they cost a lot of mana.
Yeah, and there's the theory in cEDH playing in general, I think this is popularized by Rebel, of like window, like looking for a window to win the game. Because we're playing 4-player, different windows pop up of when you have an opportunity to win the game. The window is here, can your deck do what you need needed to do when the window opens. And I think also another reason why these draw spells are so good is like if you find that window where you know something can resolve, if that thing is an Ad Nauseam, you draw 30 cards. It doesn't matter later on if that window shuts a little bit. You've already drawn 30 cards, so you can reopen it whenever you need to, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you're in control now all of a sudden.
Yeah. So that's the main reason why I think these cards are good. Should we talk over like kind of specifically like which ones are the best ones and what we like to do with them and what the game plan is?
Yeah. Do you want to start with the most cEDH ubiquitous one, or do you want to start off with the one that's best right now?
I think we should start, and there's no way to really talk about one without the other at this point, but I think we should start with Necropotence and Ad Nauseam because both of these cards have gone back and forth for me on which one is better. There's different points in the meta where Ad Nauseam is better. There's different points where Necro is better, and we kind of have to talk about them together, but I think one of these two I think we should start with.
Okay, I think that's fair. Yeah, because we are going to end up comparing them to each other, but the strategy that you use with them is kind of different, though, at the same time.
It can be, yeah. It can be different. I think the plan A with either of these spells is resolve them on turn one. That's the plan A.
Well,
if you can do that, do that, right?
Get them to resolve as quickly as possible, because the longer the game goes, the fewer windows you'll have to make them resolve.
Right, yeah. So the more you're getting attacked, and people know if you're playing these cards, they're going to attack you ahead of time. They're going to try to make it worse the longer you go. So resolving them as early as possible is the main goal, but that can't always happen. That's not always going to happen.
Oh, hey, before we really get into things too, I want to say this. If you are listening to this and you are like, hey, I've like never really resolved these spells, what do I do? Like, how should I be building my deck to take advantage of these?
Yeah.
Don't build the deck. Net deck the deck, and then learn how these cards work in practice, and then you can start to brew with them a little bit better, because it's going to be hard for us to sit here and talk about like all of the specific cards you should be adding. Like, you could play these cards in Esper, but they're worse in Esper than they are in Grixis.
Right, yeah.
So I would recommend net decking with these cards a little bit before you go ahead and like try to build your whole deck around what an instant speed Ad Nauseam or a main phase Ad Nauseam is, or something like that.
Right, yeah, I completely agree. It's a lot of these decks, there's a lot of moving pieces. Some of the cards are going to make no sense, but they're good in the overall strategy. So I think it's good to start with something that already works and then modify it as you play it.
I agree. Yeah, I would like to read these cards too.
We should read what they, because they do different things. They do.
Nice. I like how both of our brains went there too. Let's start with Necropotence, because I think I agree with you that this is the more powerful of the two in the meta right now. And I think that I agree with the cost being black. It's only 3 mana. It does help with that. It's an enchantment, so it just sticks around in play, which is also really great. And it says skip your draw step, which sucks. Why are we playing this card? Well, it also says whenever you discard a card, exile that card from your graveyard. So this is a trigger that happens whenever you discard a card specifically, but you can pay 1 life. For that cost, you can exile the top card of your library face down and then put it into your hand at the beginning of your next end step.
There's a couple things from top to bottom. Necropotence, there's a lot of broken things in a lot of broken ways. The main overall thing that we're doing with this is paying an amount of life and then on our end step putting those cards into our hand. But there's a lot of other like weird things that we can do with Necropotence. The first thing, just from the top of the card, skip your draw step. Normally that is kind of a bad thing because there's no new information when you get to your turn, but it does weirdly allow you to not lose an extra life to the Mana Vault that's tapped, because Mana Vault deals you damage in your draw step.
Which is really funny, yeah.
And it does also give you time to plan out exactly what your next turn is going to be, because you're not going to draw a card and gain new information. So while your opponents are going, you can figure out then exactly what your turn is for next turn.
Yeah, that's weirdly an upside. And when we talk about how we're going to pay life with this card, we'll talk about another way why like skipping your draw step doesn't even matter.
Right,
like,
exactly.
Yeah, it just really doesn't matter.
Next thing on the card, we talked about it briefly, the trigger to exile the card if you discard it.
Yes.
So that's specifically if the card is discarded into your graveyard.
So this is 2 downsides on the card in a row.
This is 2 downsides in a row, and they are meant to be downsides. They're meant to be negatives, but we can still, like I said with the Mana Vault thing, we can still take advantage of this too, because this card was printed many years ago, and lots of shit has been printed since then. So
we can take advantage of the fact that it puts a trigger on the stack that we'll be able to respond to later.
It's not a replacement effect. It doesn't say it never goes to the graveyard. It goes to the graveyard, and then Necropotence exiles it from the graveyard.
Exactly. The whenever makes it a trigger. So it sees that it's in the graveyard, and it has to stay in the graveyard. So, like, technically, you could Snapcaster Mage, whatever that card is there, too.
If you, say, had a Green Goblin in play, and Green Goblin gives the cards in your graveyard mayhem, which means if they're discarded this turn, you can cast them for 2 less mana. If you were to discard a Born Upon the Wind with the Necropotence out, it'll go to graveyard, it'll have a trigger on the stack to exile itself, which you can respond to, and then with the Green Goblin, mayhem it back for just 1 mana, and then be able to cast things at instant speed.
Yeah, now you said Born Upon the Wind. I feel like this is a very important piece.
Good segue.
To what Necropotence is really good at doing, which is allowing you to use the fact that it puts triggers on the stack at your end step and at the cleanup step then too, so that you have the ability to cast spells at instant speed.
Right,
So we need Born Upon the Wind, we need Valley Floodcaller. Way back in the early days of cEDH, we used Shimmermere as a way to just flash in all of our artifacts, and then that way we could just only cast artifacts at instant speed. But over the past 2 years, I would say, because it's been like 2.5 years since Lord of the Rings has come out already.
That's
Can
crazy.
you believe
Makes
that?
no sense. Yeah.
It makes no time is a figment of my imagination.
It's certainly a concept.
Yep. So we've gotten a lot more of these flash enablers, we call them.
Yeah, and that's the real reason, I think, besides just the 3 versus 5 mana, why Necropotence is more popular than Ad Nauseam right now, is the Born Upon the Wind and Valley Floodcaller effects that we got are so insanely good with the effect, with Necropotence specifically.
Right.
The reason why that is because you pick up all of these cards in your end step. When you pay a life, you exile the card. In your end step, if you were to pay 30 life in your end step, you pick up 30 cards. Normally, you have to discard those cards right away and go to in your cleanup step. But you put those cards in your hand at the beginning of your end step, which means you have your whole end step to do with whatever you want with those cards before you discard them.
You still get priority on your end step. Normally, people skip over this because they know if they had something to do, they would do it on their main phase.
Right, yeah, but you get priority at the beginning of each of your phases. So you get all of these cards in your hand, and then if you have Born Upon the Wind or Valley Floodcaller in your hand, you can still, before going to cleanup, cast Born or cast Valley Floodcaller, and then with the 30 cards you have access to, play them all right now, right?
Exactly. Now all of the spells in your hand, or the important ones, are unlocked, and you can start to deploy the rest of them from there before going to cleanup.
I guess one more thing to consider, you're not actually drawing cards. You're paying life and putting them in your hand.
Yeah.
It's not the same thing for some reason, because drawing a card specifically has to say the word draw and is also the action of just like putting a card from your library to your hand.
Yeah, the whole words mean thing in Magic comes up, and because it doesn't say draw, it's not going to trigger Orcish Bowmaster, because Orcish Bowmaster only cares if you draw a card.
Technically, it just exiles it and it puts it into exile. I normally tuck the card like under the Necropotence or over the Necropotence or whatever, and then you go to your end step and then you put them in your hand. So
because technically, you could trigger this on your opponent's turn. You could do this whenever you want. You just don't get access to the card until your next end step. So it's just like the weird way that this card works is why it's phrased this way.
And important to note in the strategy that I want to touch on real quick is that you can do this on your opponent's turn. So say you Necropotence, you pay 5 life, put 5 cards in your hand on your end step, and you pass a turn. I often think something like this is a good strategy to begin with. If your opponent gets rid of the Necropotence before it gets back to you, thinking like, let's stop them from drawing more cards, if they get rid of that Necropotence, it doesn't matter. You can just, in response to that, pay the 30 life or whatever, and then on your next end step, you still have to wait. On your next end step, you'll still get all those cards, even if the Necropotence is gone.
But you get your draw step back.
But
for
you
that
get your
turn,
draw step back,
too.
yeah.
So you do get like bonus card.
Right. So don't let people kill your Necropotence, because if they do, who cares? It already resolved. No matter what, you're going to be able to do what you want to do.
Or let them kill it.
Exactly.
Just don't let it resolve immediately.
Pay the life
some
first.
life into it. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, it does make it tricky because you have to pay life before you get full scope of information. Someone could have a haste creature or whatever. Who cares? You know, they're not going to have that in cEDH. Just pay the life.
Now, I want to talk about paying life.
Yeah.
Because obviously, if I cast black Necropotence and I have no other mana up, and it's like turn 30 into the game, and there's a huge board state.
Yeah.
Am I going to pay 30 life into Necropotence?
Yeah, when to do it, when to pay life, and how much life do you pay? This is tricky, and it's always going to range, and it's always going to be different for sure. There's no one size fits all.
Every board state is different, so it's going to be very difficult for us to go, you always do this. Here are the heuristics, and this is like a good set of rules to follow. What we can do is give you like some general guidelines of things to keep in mind for when you're evaluating the board state, and just like some kind of good practices that we've had good experience with recently too.
Yeah, exactly. So like the first thing that I have to think about is before you're casting any of these spells, you have to have a plan for what happens next. If this resolves, what do I do with it? You have to know that, I think, before you even put it on the stack. Now, this is tricky. The people will say things and reveal information to you as it's resolving, and then you'll have to shift your gear. But you have to try to figure out what you're doing. I think the best way to win with Necropotence is by winning in the end step, which means that after you draw all those cards, you have to have already like 3 mana into play. I like having 3 because it allows you to cast Valid Floodcaller or Born Upon the Wind, and then ideally, if that mana can be 1 of it blue and also 2 of it red, meaning that I can cast Final Fortune or Born Upon the Wind, having those 3 options in my deck means that eventually I'll be able to cast a bunch of spells in my end step. So the goal is to do that. But if I don't have that extra mana yet, if I'm just turn 1, Command Tower, Dark Ritual, Necropotence, I'm not going to pay 30 life right away. Because at best, the only mana that I'm going to have access to in my end step is going to be a Simian Spirit Guide or an Elvish Spirit Guide. I can't cast anything else. It's just those. There's nothing else, right?
That's the thing. And then you have to get rid of 23 of the 30 cards that you saw.
Right. And realistically, in these Necro Storm decks, I feel a lot of the cards are actually really important. Having to draw 30 and then get rid of 23 of them can actually mess your plan up because you needed some of them in your deck and you had to get rid of too many cards.
Yeah, now your backup strategy gets binned and a lot of your interaction gets binned, so people can use the information that they have against you as they get a whole turn cycle before you get to go again.
So what I like to do with Ad Nauseam is, number 1, resolve it as early as possible and then do my first...
Say Necro.
Sorry. What I like to do with Necropotence is resolve it as early as possible, and then off of my first Necro, just pay like 7 life, somewhere between 5 and 10.
Yeah.
I want to hit my second land drop off of these cards, so however many lands in your deck, if you have 25 lands in your deck, it's safe to say that 1 out of 4 of them might be a land. I like to hedge those odds a little bit, and like I will say if I need to hit my second land drop, I'm going to pay 6 life or whatever, so I can see 6 cards and hope that one of those 6 is a land.
I always like over Necroing on the first turn, but just by a little bit.
Just by a little.
I think 10's probably the maximum I would do, but I always want to go at least 1 over my maximum hand size so that I have some options. Because if I just go up to 7, then I'm not getting any extra information for what I can do. I'm just kind of stuck with a refilled hand. And I don't know if you ever like gotten Wheel of Fortune and looked at a bad 7 before, but like
it can be bad.
That's gonna happen. And I know you said that like every card is important, and they are really important, but sometimes they come up when you don't want them to. So I like hedging my bets just a little bit with that, and that's why I like to go to 8 cards or maybe 9 cards, because whatever the 2 ones I need least, I can bin into exile and then have an even better 7.
100%. Like the only way that changes is if your hand is already good. Like, so say in your hand, I'm already looking at Born Upon the Wind and enough mana to cast it on my next turn. I'm just going to 7. I'm not going to any extra because I don't need any extra. I've already gotten what I need. I just need to get to my next turn so I can cast this shit. I might go to 8, you know what I mean? Or
you
7,
should still go to 8, because now that you said that, if you go to 7, everyone's going to know that, I'll know.
I'll still get 8.
You can't go to 7.
I can't go to 7 ever again, actually. But at least that's my strategy when I resolve Necro on turn 1, which is the plan, or turn 2. If I resolve Necro on turn 4 and I still have a bunch of life and I resolve the Necro, and then next to the resolved Necro, I already see 3 mana, 30, I'm going right away. I'm going all for it right away. So it's not like you always little Necro, then big Necro. You little Necro when everything is going right because you're Necroing on turn 1, and then on turn 2, you Necro and then do it right away. That's also still very good.
Yes, I agree, especially because by that point, there's a board state that's been established, and people are going to be able to attack you. So a lot of times, like, when you get to the point where you have mana left over after your Necro, this is your final window to win the game.
Right.
Because either you're going to put yourself down to a super low life total and get attacked, or you're going to put yourself down to a super low life total and win the game.
And if you don't win the game, everyone knows, like, what else is left in their hand. They have 7 left cards. They're going to win again next turn. It does tell everyone now's the window. It's not conspicuous whatsoever. It is very loud and obnoxious, but it's so powerful that I think it's worth it.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So say we get to this point. We resolve the Necro. We do a 7. We go around. How low do you go when you go low? For me, I go to 5.
You go to 5.
On my big dump down, I go to 5. Mainly, and this can depend on deck to deck, but mainly I'm thinking about a Force of Will, an Imperial Seal, and a fetch land. I want to be able to do that. Maybe one of those is an Ancient Tomb. Maybe you know what I mean?
Like your land drops an Ancient Tomb, you have like Mana Confluence or something.
100%. So like, and it can depend. If your lands are, you're like, oh, Ancient Tomb, City Brass, Mana Confluence. Okay, I actually need to go only to 7. I can only punch down that far.
I have a Talisman in play too that like I have to use to cast the Necro.
Yeah, but realistically, in the dark, if you have only 1 or 2 or not much stuff going on, I like to go at 5 is kind of like as low as I'll often go. And I think that can normally do it because off of the first Necro, you pay maybe like 6, and on the second Necro, you maybe pay like 25, and then over that, you've drawn 30 cards, and then maybe someone does you damage, and you had to, Mana Confluence or whatever. So that's normally what I go to. I go to 5.
That's also because like you might have had to play a fetch land on your first turn too. Like you got to keep a lot of that in mind. Your turn 1 stuff counts too, not just the stuff that you have to do after you Necro as well.
I also almost always fetch early if I can. I know sometimes this can be bad because you want to get like the 5-color lands out early, but I like the access of getting as many extra fetch lands into my graveyard as possible for when I inevitably win with Breach.
Yeah.
So if I can spend my first 2 turns getting a free card into my graveyard off of a fetch land, sometimes that can be the difference of like going for a turn 2 Breach line.
That's really nice. Yeah, that's a good way to like be thinking ahead of what you're trying to do to end the game. And we'll talk about officially ending the game after we go through some of these other cards.
First step though, we've drawn 30 cards. We're in our end step. We have the mana. We have resolved the Born Upon the Wind. What do we do first?
Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to talk about the other cards before we talk about every single thing that we do, because everything that we're going to do from here on out is the same for Ad Nauseam and is the same for Peer into the Abyss.
Yeah, it is right. So we can pause here on what we do next once we have all the cards in our hands. We'll go to that later.
And now we can go back to
card.
Ad Nauseam and talk a little bit about the nuances with this card.
Should we say what it does? Everyone knows what it does.
Everyone knows what it does, right? It's 3 and a 2 black for an instant that makes you reveal the top card of your library and put that card into your hand, and then you lose life equal to the mana value, and then you can repeat that process any number of times.
A couple things that I'll say about this one. Ad Nauseam is an instant. Use that. Utilize that. That's powerful effect. If you can get it on the stack on turn 1 or 2, if you're in seat or 1 or 2, even if I guess you're in seat 4, if you're a turn 2, you still jam now.
Probably. Right? I think turn 3 is where I'm starting to look for windows for an instant speed Ad Nauseam, but that window could also still be on your main phase. Don't ever underestimate that too.
Yeah, and it's important to note that Ad Nauseam is on average, I feel, realistically going to draw you less cards than a Necropotence will. I see on average with an Ad Nauseam somewhere between like 20 and 25 cards.
Oh, that makes sense, because the average mana value of your deck is normally like 1 point something,
yeah.
Whereas Necro is always 1 per card.
Right, and realistically, you have to go riskily, I think. There is like a safe way to go, which is like once you get to 5 life or 6 life, you just like stop there right away because you can hit Force of Will. And then there's the odds of, well, what are you actually going to be able to do? So I have to talk a little bit about what to do once you have all the cards in your hand, because as you're resolving Ad Nauseam, it's important to know when to stop, because you have to know what your first step is.
You have to know what you're looking for at that point.
So like the first step I'll just touch on briefly is after you have a bunch of cards, you need the mana right away. You need to be able to cast stuff. You need to have 0 mana drops realistically, or you have to have a land drop, or you have to have a starting point. So right away, that's what I'm looking for.
If you have nothing to springboard you with mana into a follow-up play, there's no point in stopping.
Don't even worry about considering how your Underworld Breach line is going to work. If you can't cast it, it doesn't matter. Don't waste your brain space. So like as I'm Ad Nauseam, I'm looking for Lotus Petals and Chrome Moxes and Mox Diamonds.
Right.
As I see the 0 mana artifacts, then I go, okay, I know it can get somewhere. So that's what I'm looking for as I'm resolving it. And the main things to think about as you're resolving the Ad Nauseam is the mana
your
first.
Life total, as to make sure that like, do I need to stop at 5? Because a lot of times like you would play this card with like another big expensive spell like Peer into the Abyss back in the day, and stopping at 7 was a very popular thing. But then you, like you said, you have to weigh your odds of, does this amount of cards win me the game, or do I need to still go because I'm going to lose? It's another one of these things with Necro, is that if you pass the turn and can't win, you're going to lose to the table.
There comes a point where you go, all right, I'm at 3 and I don't have it yet. I have to still go and hope that I find the Chrome Mox. This happened in a game recently at a tournament that we talked about in another podcast, where I was already at 3. If I hit a 3 drop, I'm dead. Wheel of Fortune still in the deck, and I keep going and I hit Chrome Mox and I'm able to win because I had just that one little piece of 0 mana to start me off. So that's important to think about when you're resolving the Ad Nauseam and the Necro, is where do you plan to go afterwards? What mana do you have already? What mana do you need? If you spent all of your fast mana to cast the thing, what are the likelihoods that you're going to find more fast mana in that group? If it's low, you might have to do an end step Ad Nauseam. You might have to say, I've already played my land drop. I can only find Chrome Mox and Mox Diamond. There's nothing else. There's no Spirit Guides or whatever the case may be. I have to do this on end step so that I can untap, hit my land drop, and have my lands back that I just used to cast it, right?
But there's also a lot of advantage to the instant speed Ad Naus. Like you just said, you get the untap, you get an extra draw that you get with it too, so you get a little bit more information. Might give you the opportunity to also like use an instant speed top deck tutor at instant speed as well prior to going to that turn. But you can also use it to like politically stop someone else from winning. Yeah, like you can set up scenarios where you go, guys, they're going to win. I have an Ad Nauseam. You kind of need this Ad Nauseam to resolve so that I can help stop this other person here. And then you can use that to your advantage, because you'll find interaction to stop them, but you're sure as hell find a win for yourself then too.
Right, yeah. If player A is going for a win, you can say, hey, player B and C, I'll Ad Nauseam and I'll find a counterspell. And once I find the counterspell, I promise you I will use the counterspell on the win condition. And then you can do that, and then you still have 25 cards in your hand, and you can win when it gets back to you.
Exactly, yeah. It's kind of nice that like there's windows that you can create in instant speed ad nauseams that you don't just like have to wait for your opponents to do something particular. You can like kind of make scenarios for yourself politically.
And you can also, it's a choice. You can choose as you're resolving it when to stop. I've done this recently with you, and I don't know if this is good, but I said I'll stop at 5 life. Once I hit 5 life, I'll just stop resolving ad nauseam. I'll just take whatever those cards are, and that'll be it. This way you can keep your counterspell, and I at least have a couple cards in my hand, and you say, sure, that's fine.
It was pretty unlucky,
so I was kind of...
No, because
it was good, but
Elvish Spirit Guide all of a sudden is like, oh man, this cuts out a lot of the cards.
Exactly, but at the time, you were already ahead, and were you ahead? I don't know if you were ahead. I don't even remember the situation.
I don't remember the situation either, but it worked though. It let me want the ad nauseam to resolve or be more okay with it resolving. And you can probably flex with that number too. Start off with like 15.
See if they'll let you get away with that.
No, and then you go, all right, 10. What about 10?
Yeah, I'll stop at 10.
There's nothing stopping you technically from starting at 30 besides you annoying your friends even too. But.
And they don't have to take this. They can say, I'm countering this ad nauseam either way. And realistically, there's a real world that they should. But there are some situations where you go, hey, I know the next player behind you is going to go for a win. If you use your counterspell on me, we are dead to the next person. If you just give me a couple cards, we can both try to stop that other person. Like, you can, I think you're right. There's a lot of political aspects to it.
At that point, you can still go, I mean, it still needs to be like 15 or 20 life because I got to make sure I find interaction too.
Yeah. Can I add something to the Necropotence part of the podcast?
Yeah, I'm probably going to put it in here still, but yeah.
The only thing that I wanted to say is the choice thing. We talked about the ad nauseam thing being a choice. With Necropotence, you exile the card face down, so you don't actually see what it is.
Oh, yeah.
But there are other cards in Magic the Gathering and some that we're going to talk about today that allow you to look at the top card of your library at any time and cast things from the top of your library. So say, for instance, you have a Bolas Citadel, which allows you to cast things from the top of your library. You can look at the card, and then if Necropotence is in play, exile that card, put it over here, and then cast the next card with Bolas Citadel. So it allows you to sift through. So there are other things that Necropotence does just by removing the top card of your library that can help you win the game in other ways. I just wanted to touch on that as like another thing that Necropotence does. It makes it the most powerful card in the world.
And then the last card that's in like this specific bracket of paying life to draw stuff is Peer into the Abyss.
It is. But realistically, I think Peer plays a lot differently than these other two do.
I think so too. The life drawback doesn't exist with
nothing.
Peer. It's literally nothing. If you go from 40 to 20, that's nothing. If you go from 4 to 2, that's nothing. It's just kind of nice.
It never matters.
It never matters. I liked it back in the day, like 2022. That's so long ago.
So you're so old.
3 years is a long time, yeah. But like, I used to like playing both of these cards so that way, like, if I was focused on by the board and I couldn't find a window for an ad nauseam, I had Peer into the Abyss, and it didn't matter what my life total was. It would still draw me 40 cards or something. It would still let me win the game right there.
And I think Peer into the Abyss is great. It certainly is a powerful card. I've been off it for a while because I don't love it in Grixis strategies where ad nauseam is the main focus.
Well, I also think that Necropotence wasn't good in like 2022.
That's true. We have a better backup to ad naus now.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, now ad naus is the backup to Necro. That's kind of like how funny like this cycle has gone. But like, yeah, whereas no one was playing Necro back then, now like almost no one is playing Peer now.
Right. But I think there are certain decks where Peer is specifically better in than in the other blue decks where it's worse in.
Oh, 5, sure, Dylan.
Specifically like Dargo decks, specifically like the Mardu decks.
Anyone on Hoarding Broodlord.
Hoarding Broodlord, specifically, there's a Hoarding Broodlord line where you can get
Saw in Half.
Saw in Half, thank you. And get rid of your Hoarding Broodlord to get 2 things, and you get like a Sacrifice and Peer into the Abyss, and you can win the game right from there.
Exactly, yeah, which is a nice 1-card win condition.
I argue that you could do the same thing and get Sacrifice ad nauseam and then cast ad nauseam and then have mana afterwards, but realistically, in a lot of these Mardu decks, the mana value of shit can be quite high, which is where this Hoarding Broodlord normally lives. You're already playing Hoarding Broodlord, number 1, but you're also playing other like 4 and 3 mana creatures that gain value with Tymna. You know what I mean?
For like Ruthless Technomancer and stuff like that.
It does kind of make sense. And like a resolved Peer into the Abyss does draw more cards than any of the other cards that we're going to talk about today.
That's true.
For
because
sure.
Normally when I've resolved this card, the best way to do it is count up how many permanents you have in play and cards in your hand, and then take 99 or 98 and subtract that number from it. And you normally end up with like 76 to 84 or something like that.
So you're drawing 40 cards, which is much more.
42, I think, might be the most amount of of cards I've drawn off this, and I've never had an Ad Naus be that good.
Right. Normally, Ad Naus is, I find 25 to 30, like we said. Necropotence 30 to 35, something like that. Peer into the Abyss is normally a lot more than that.
Yeah, exactly. But your deck's probably a little bit worse now, though, that you're playing Peer into the Abyss. So a lot of times what happens is, like, your win conditions are a little bit harder to do. It's a 7-mana sorcery. Yeah.
It's a 7-mana sorcery.
So, like, you don't have the flexibility to ever do it at a different time, and you have to use a lot more resources to just do it in order to draw 5 more cards, which ultimately don't matter a lot of the time.
Yeah, Necropotence and Ad Nauseam are a lot more flexible. Necropotence because it's cheaper, Ad Nauseam because it's instant speed and cheaper. It gives you more choices, and like when it comes to like game theory, every game that I ever play, the common denominator is the player with the most choices is the one who wins the game. If you can make the most choices, you're going to win the game because you have just more options than your opponent does.
The most correct choices.
The most correct choices. Yeah, I guess that's true. You have to make
because
good
it
choices.
does open you up to make more incorrect decisions. Like the longer that the game, I've lost a lot of games where I just keep making mistake after mistake.
Right. That's why I try to win on turn 1.
Exactly. That's why Peer is worse.
Right. Yeah, Peer is worse. So I personally, I like Necro the most and Ad Nauseam, and then I'm not a big Peer fan right now, but I see its need in the decks that play it.
I'm a Peer fan in general, but not in the format right now.
I don't want to resolve an Ad Nauseam and then go, oh, I have to stop at 7 because Peer isn't in my deck.
What
no,
the
I'm
hell?
going to keep going, and then it's going to be Peer on top.
I think we've gotten to a point where they're different decks. The Ad Naus decks don't run Peer, and the Peer decks don't run Ad Naus. Like, you're just doing totally different things with these cards.
It's kind of funny, right? That they do similar things, but realistically, they're actually like kind of a lot different.
It feels way more like a Pokemon niche. Like, we've been way more into VGC recently, and I feel like there's very specific Pokemon for very specific niches, depending on are restricted Pokemon allowed right now? Like, what does the format look like? And what are, like, the other most powerful things? I feel like there's type matchups that just fit, like, very specific things that you think you're going to see in a tournament, and I feel like that's kind of what these are now. Like, depending on what the flavor of your deck is, am I going to see Deflecting Swat a lot?
Right.
Should I not play Peer into the Abyss because it's a target player?
Yeah, so that's a good one. We should talk about the specific cards that fuck up each of these cards that we talked about, or should we talk about the fourth one first?
I don't think we should talk about the fourth one until we talk about what to do with the pile of 30 cards, because the fourth one doesn't give you a pile of 30 cards.
Okay, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Okay, so you want to talk about what to do once you have a pile of 30 cards?
Or do you want to talk about the cards that fuck us up first?
Cards that fuck us up, because we got to get past those first. We have to have a plan once the thing goes on the stack.
If we get fucked up, who cares about it?
I don't have to think about what I do when I win anyway if I'm fucked up. The main one, Peer into the Abyss, I feel like gets fucked up by the most shit. It specifically says draw a card, so Shieldred and more specifically Orcish Bowmaster, that's super bad and not good at all for you.
Ass.
Not good. Deflecting Swat is a kind of funny one that we always talk about, but...
I did this in VV a couple months ago. I got to Deflecting Swat Peer to me.
Peer into the Abyss is a target player does this, loses half their life and draws the card. So if you Deflecting Swat it to yourself, you can do that, which
For
would be
no
really good.
mana.
For
Holy
no mana,
shit.
yeah. So does the new Lightning Avatar card also redirect a spell?
Yes, it does.
You could do that to a Peer?
It has it's a spell with a single target, and you don't target someone else with that.
I think so. I'm pretty sure that card also fucks up Peer. So those are the things specifically to be aware of when you're resolving Peers. Deflecting Swat and Orcish Bowmaster. Those are the top of the list. And now, what is it? Redirect Lightning?
Redirect Lightning is up there.
These are cards you have to be very aware of. Whereas with Necropotence and Ad Nauseam, those cards don't actually do anything. They don't do anything against either of those cards because neither Necropotence or Ad Nauseam doesn't technically draw a card, and Deflecting Swat can help in a war, but it doesn't actually stop the Ad Nauseam or the Breach, right?
And there's no target either. There's no target for anything for you to swat at.
Right. There are things that fuck up these cards. What are they? There's really not a counterspell.
I really don't know what they are. Yeah, counterspells, like Spell Pierce.
Yeah, it's not as obvious, but truly like Ad Nauseam, the best thing against Ad Nauseam is Spell Pierce and Dispel. When Ad Nauseam was much more popular, those counterspells were the ones that got picked because they were great at stopping Ad Nauseam.
Swan Song hits both of these things too. This is why we like Swan Song instead of Strict Serenade.
And why I've been telling people to stop playing Swan Song. Because I want to resolve my enchantment.
No, we need Swan Song around. We don't need Strict Serenade because who cares about the Thassa's Oracle?
They already have 30 cards. They drew them because you couldn't counter the Necropotence.
Exactly, and they're going to stop your Strict Serenade with the 30 cards that they drew anyway. So stop them from drawing 30 cards with your Swan Song instead.
Other cards to avoid. What are specifically good against Necropotence? I feel like I had some stuff that was like poignant anything good against these things besides just
no,
like counter spells.
we only wrote down stuff for the cards that suck.
Okay. All right.
I guess Necrodominance is technically on this list too.
Yeah, we should talk a little bit about Necrodominance.
Yeah, because this is Necropotence, except
all of those broken things about it that we mentioned, they said, let's fix that for real.
Yeah, and so now instead on your end step, there's a trigger that says you pay however much life you want and you'll draw that many cards.
Right, yeah.
This sucks.
It sucks because it gives into Orcish Bowmaster. Not only draws you the cards, but it is also a replacement effect. It's exile shenanigan of exiling things from the graveyard. It is a replacement effect, which means that you realistically can't do anything clever with it. You can't cast shit from the graveyard in its speed. There's no trigger that you can respond to in your cleanup step that will give you priority again so that you can win the game. None of that.
Plus, it makes your max hand size 5 instead of 7.
5 instead of 7, which is realistically actually a big deal. That plan of doing a little and then doing a lot, just going up to 5 cards in your hands sucks.
Yeah, throw that whole over Necro thing out the window because now you can only keep 5 cards. That's way different than keeping 7.
Exactly. So like now there's like an argument that you have to actually go a little bit deeper on your first Necro than you would with Necropotence because you can only keep 5 of them. So you have to make sure that you find enough stuff in 5 cards rather than enough stuff in 7 cards.
Oh yeah. So what I just said was wrong. Yeah.
You have to pay more. Yeah, I think you have to pay more in the initial.
I think you're right. You do have to pay more.
Which sucks even worse because then you have to discard more. So I think Necrodominance is specifically much better a little bit later. This one's really good if you can resolve it on turn 3 and then you already have the mana and then you can do that draw 30 cards in my end step right away. Yeah. I like it much more there.
It's always going to be your backup one because you're never going to like beseech the mirror for this one when you're already playing Necropotence.
I'm always beseeching for the other one, exactly. But that being said, at turn 1, Necrodominance, still good. It's going to feel a little awkward, and at first you're going to have to like discard some weird shit that you don't want to and to make sure that you find the right mana, but it's still really good. It still gives you the option of drawing 30 cards for 3 mana. Yeah. That's a good rate. So if you have to do a little couple of things to make it work, that's fine. And while we're on the Necrodominance, the things that you also have to consider with this one is you have to get rid of the Necrodominance before you win, most of the time.
Yeah, that is another downside. You have to like Chain of Vapor it back to your hand because like there's some, all things that go to the graveyard are exiled. Is that what it says? All things that
go to the graveyard are exiled, yeah. So like realistically, you can think, well, why don't you just set up Thoracle Consultation? That's actually a lot harder than you would think out of 20 cards and when you've tapped out all of your resources.
It's way easier to set up Breach.
It's way easier to set up Breach because then you can reuse shit. So it just becomes easier to Chain of Vapor or Beseech the Mirror, the Necrodominance away, and then just go for a Breach after that. But that's the only thing to make sure that you're considering is that you will probably have to get rid of the Necrodominance and that going to 5 is going to suck. So you have to keep that in mind of what else you've got going on.
I thought of another card that you have to watch out for when you play Necros.
Yeah?
Which is Steel Enchantment.
Steel Enchantment,
You just did this to someone in a tournament. When you play it, it's out there and it's fragile and people can steal it or even they can just copy it too, which can also be bad for you.
Yeah, and it is specifically good against Necrodominance. Before when I said you can just draw cards if your opponent tries to get rid of your thing, Necrodominance can't do that. You can only draw those cards or activate it on the end step. So if you draw 5, you pass a turn, and then somebody steal enchantments or copy enchantments or Besages it, you can't respond to that by drawing cards and then seeing them in your end step.
I can do my 20 now still.
That moment's gone. So Necrodominance is worse than Necropotence in literally every way. It is so bad, but it still draws you 30 cards for 3
Necro's a Necro, guys.
Yeah, you have to play around it a little bit more, but it can still be really, really good.
Yeah. All right, so I have a pile of 30 cards.
Yes.
What do I do with them?
What do you do? First thing.
Finally. We're like 40 minutes in.
40 minutes in. What do you do? Yeah. First thing I normally do is sort the mana. I try to put the extra lands to the back of the hand, and I put the fast mana to the front of the hand.
Exactly. Well, I have one quick step first.
Yep.
I gotta look for a flash enabler. That's my step 0.5, is if it's Necropotence, I gotta look for a flash enabler.
Right, yeah. You have to look for a flash enabler to do it right away. That's the first thing you're looking for. If it's an Ad Nauseam, you might still be doing that.
I might still want one,
You might still be looking in response to your win condition. I will cast Spawn Upon the Wind and win over top of it.
Yeah, but in general, when you have 30 cards, this is an optional step unless you're in a Necro deck, I guess.
Right, yeah, exactly. Then once you can cast stuff, you want to put all of your mana to the front of your hand and see how much mana can I make. So normally I count up, okay, I have this Mox Diamond, I have this Chrome Mox, I have this Dark Ritual. That's 4 mana right there. So I have 4 mana. What can I do with 4 mana? Like, oh, I have this Demonic Tutor. What can I do with the Demonic Tutor? I can find another piece of mana so that I can go find Underworld Breach so that when I cast Underworld Breach, Demonic Tutor's in my graveyard. So you have to have like the beginnings of a plan, but realistically, I don't lock down the full plan while I'm in the Ad Nauseam while I'm stopping.
No. You got to make sure that you have the mana to be able to do anything first. So I agree. I always like to make sure I have all my mana and like my 2 mana rocks then. Anything that costs more mana than it makes, I start to like kind of put behind those cards because I might need Mana Vault to fix my colors later and to like cast an Arcane Signet after that. I don't want to rely on that if I don't have to. So I still want to keep it to the forefront, but I don't want it to be like one of the cards that I just run out right away as I'm like establishing my mana. I want to make sure that my mana's established and then I'll start to cast more action spells. And I don't want Arcane Signet to be a part of that equation.
I want to go up on mana at first.
Exactly, before I fix my mana. And I want to know, do I even need to fix the colors of mana?
Exactly.
Or am I just going to be throwing away extra pips?
I think the win condition is the second thing that you look for. Is like, this is how much mana I have. What can I do with that? I have 4 mana. I'm not even going to bother considering something that costs 5 mana right now. I'm going to move that to the back or whatever.
Yeah.
Because my plan is I have 4 mana. What can I do with that? After you figure out how much mana you have, then you look at what are my win conditions. Okay, do I have an Underworld Breach? Technically isn't a win condition, but it is. It's a win condition.
Resolving an Underworld Breach gives you access to so much stuff that you will be able to win from it. It just also requires you to get some of the other stuff that you'll already either have in hand or you'll be able to toot for it later, which we'll talk about soon.
Right, yeah. So like first off mana, and then second, what win conditions do I have? Do I have Thoracle? Do I have Tainted Pact? Do I have Demonic Consultation? Am I in an Otherworld deck where I have something? But those are the
What's my combo that I'm going for?
Yeah. Those are the main things that I'm looking for first. And then after that, I'm looking to see what tutors I have.
That's what I have too. Number 3 is tutors.
What tutors I have. So if I don't have win conditions, can I tutor for them? Do I make enough mana to be able to tutor for those win conditions?
Yeah, can I fill in these gaps? And do I have, the other thing I want to tack onto this that I didn't have here is, do I have a way to draw the card that I tutor to the top of my deck too? So like, am I on Gataxian Probe, or is there, I don't know, just something
Metamorphose, another Born Upon the Wind because you cast Valley Floodcaller.
Is there a One Ring in play that I can copy with my Phyrexian Metamorph so I can draw a card? You really have to think outside of the box if like Vampiric Tutor is one of these things.
That might be a reason to, if you have the option of casting Born Upon a Wind or Valley Floodcaller, of casting the Valley Floodcaller because you need the cantrip from Born Upon the Wind to draw the mystical tutor thing that you look for afterwards,
great point.
right?
Yeah.
Like something to think about as you're looking through.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you just gotta be like thinking 15 steps ahead with this kind of thing. But yeah, I agree. Then you find tutors because it doesn't make sense to look for your tutors first when the stuff that you need is gonna be in your hand.
You might not need to tutor anything.
Exactly.
You might not need to search.
It might just be there. Yeah.
I think looking at it this way kind of saves you brain space because it is overwhelming. It's an overwhelming amount of information.
Exactly, yeah.
Figuring out how to sort it and figuring out, okay, well, these 10 lands, those can go right to the back. I don't need any of these, so I don't need to sort past them as I'm looking for my other shit. Move them right to the back. The only left thing is
protection.
Do you have any interaction?
Can I back up what I'm going to do after this, either with counter spells, or am I preemptively backing up what I'm doing by running out a Grand Abolisher after I've run my mana out?
And I think it's important to at least roughly get to this point of figuring out what cards you have in these 4 categories before you start your line. Because there can be a world where, okay, I have Defense Grid. I should factor that into my mana production. I thought I had 5 mana, but with Defense Grid, I have 3 mana. Can I still win off of 3 mana if I resolve the Defense Grid first?
But like, I've been there where I didn't think about that before, and I went, oh, I'm safe. I'll resolve Defense Grid. And then I go, oh, shoot, I'm literally 1 mana off of being able to do the win.
Right. So if that's the case, you have to say, okay, I'm actually not going to cast this Defense Grid. I'm going to instead just go for it and hope.
So those preemptive non-free things are not worth thinking about until you already know what your win condition is, which means that you already know how much mana you have left over after you've tutored and after you've cast your win conditions, right?
It's also important to, at this point, have a rough idea of what you think your opponents might still have. Because if they have letting you get to this point, they don't have much.
Probably don't have much.
But they might have something. They might still have a Mindbreak Trap because Ad Nauseam is cool in the fact that you can get around Mindbreak Trap in a couple of different ways by casting it at weird times. Necropotence, the same thing. You can just land Dark Ritual, Necropotence. Mindbreak Trap isn't on for that, but it might be on for the next thing. I find specifically the main things that I'm thinking about at this point are, yes, Mindbreak Trap, Flusterstorm also a little bit, and then the channel effects. Most of the other things you can play around. If you've drawn 30 cards, a Force of Will and a Mental Misstep and a Swan Song, that should cover you, right? You should be good, but it might have a hard time covering you against Flusterstorm or Mindbreak Trap or a Besage You. So those are the cards that I think you have to consider when you're looking at your interaction too, is what could my opponent still have?
If I played Ad Nauseam, I'm a little worried about Angel's Grace, but we learned in a podcast pretty recently that if you're playing Necropotence, you don't need to be worried about Angel's Grace because you'll create a new trigger on the cleanup after Angel's Grace has worn off, and you'll still be able to win then.
With Boseiju, I think, and Otawara, those are the ones that I think are kind of like the most relevant things to think about when you're like, what could still stop you at this point? Because if you're winning with a big draw spell like Necropotence or something, oftentimes Underworld Breach is the finisher, and Boseiju is particularly fucked up against you.
Right, yeah. Oh, same with Otawara, too. Putting it back into your hand, it can also be devastating at the right time.
So I think it's important to, when you're going to cast your Breach, have the same mindset that you did with the Necropotence of make all of your mana first and then cast the Underworld Breach.
If you get dazed with the Breach on the stack, that'll feel so bad you're staring at like a Chrome Mox in your hand.
So I think it's often best, even if you have to feed a Flusterstorm.
Or a Heuristics study.
Right. And there are times where you don't do that, where you say, actually, I have to just resolve Breach right away because Defense Grid is in my graveyard. So I've resolved Breach right away, then I resolve Defense Grid, then I'm good to go. Like, there can be obviously if, and buts around all of this, but I like to make sure that I have as much mana as possible before the Breach resolves, especially if I have instant speed, because that means that once the Breach resolves, I can try to flashback multiple pieces of more mana. And then every time, if I were to, say, cast a piece of mana from my graveyard with the Underworld Breach, and they say, okay, I'll Boseiju your Underworld Breach right away, I have more mana in my graveyard that I can cast again in response to, and then go over top of that. So like being aware, like there are ways that you can set up that where you're not actually that dead to Boseiju, because you can, by the time Breach is here, go over top of it.
Especially because like a lot of these situations end up having flash speed for you.
Right,
so,
exactly.
Like, you can just respond to all this kind of stuff. I agree. So that's kind of what we're looking for.
That's kind of what we're looking for.
And then you just cast spells to win the game from there. You know what your win condition is already. So all you have to do is use the mana that you made to cast Thassa's Oracle, Demonic Consultation. Sometimes with Underworld Breach, you might have to breach your tutors back and like re-tutor for Brain Freeze and then Lion's Eye Diamond. But if you're playing Ad Nauseam, you should know what the rest of your deck does too. So as long as you know what your end state is, you've done the hard part after the Ad Nauseam has resolved. Yeah, the hard part is getting these cards to resolve.
Right. Yeah, and then I guess we should talk about like game plan, like you said, like the tutor from the Breach. Like if I'm going for a Breach, which is normally what I'm doing when I'm casting a Necro or an Ad Nauseam or something, the mana first, then the tutor, find the Underworld Breach, and then reuse the tutor from my graveyard to find Lion's Eye Diamond or Brain Freeze or Grinding Station to keep going from there. That's normally the pattern. Make a bunch of mana, cast Underworld Breach, use a tutor to find the rest of the pieces, and use a tutor twice or three times.
And what makes this so easy is that we've been talking about having 30 cards in hand that just go to the graveyard with your Lion's Eye Diamond. So your Breach has the ultimate amount of fuel, and you always have like these redundant lands, all these other cards we were talking about not needing, because if it wasn't interaction or a tutor or a win condition or mana, you don't need it. So you can just end up putting all of that into like your Breach fodder, and then like have plenty of resources to find everything you need.
We talked about this a little bit in a past episode, but I think it's important to note in this episode with Necropotence and Underworld Breach how some of those synergies work, because at first glance it seems like they do not work, but in actuality they do work quite well together.
Yeah, because Necropotence only cares about cards that you've discarded.
Right. There are ways that you can do with Lion's Eye Diamond, but like we said earlier, that's a trigger that it puts on the stack. So if Breach is in play, I talked about Green Goblin, but the more common thing is if Breach is in play, you can still cast those cards with Underworld Breach, and most importantly, exile them to the escape cost to cast other spells while the trigger on the stack is there to exile them.
Exactly. We're still abusing the fact that it's a trigger on the stack, and it's not like Necrodominance where it is a replacement effect.
Also important to note that Underworld Breach's trigger to sacrifices itself happens at the beginning of end step, which is the same time that the Necropotence trigger to put all the cards into your hand goes off, and since those are both your triggers, you can choose the order that they resolve. If you just have Breach in your hand, you can sorcery speed the Breach and then pay 30 life with Necropotence. I'm losing my life a lot in these podcasts by the end of it.
We're talking a lot, and we've already been going for quite a little while.
Final thought.
Yeah.
These are two triggers that go in the stack at the same time. Since they're your triggers, you can choose which one will resolve first. So you can first have the Underworld Breach trigger go on the stack and then the Necropotence trigger, which means you will draw the cards, or rather put the cards from Necropotence into your hand first, and then with the Breach trigger to sacrifice itself still in the stack, still do things and cast stuff from your graveyard. That's kind of important to note of like how to close all this shit up, is that you may think that, oh no, these cards don't work together. They actually work together very well.
Yeah, this is all part of like how important important it is to know how the stack works in cEDH and keeping in mind like what stuff is making triggers, knowing that words like when and whenever are things that trigger so that you can do things in response to them.
We didn't even talk about the going to discard with Necropotence, specifically in this episode, how if you have 10 cards in your hand and you have to go to your discard, you have to go to your cleanup step and you get rid of those 3 cards, it puts a trigger on the stack with Necropotence to exile those cards from your graveyard, which means that you will get priority again in your cleanup step, which is something that you can otherwise not normally do, meaning that you have an opportunity to win the game in your cleanup step if you have a Born Upon the Wind or something like that.
Yeah, so that way, like, if a silence had resolved on your turn, if you do have a way to get instant speed after the triggers are on the stack, you can then recast spells now in response to that trigger. If you have a Born Upon the Wind, that allows you to cast every kind of spell then from there and give you another opportunity to win the game.
For some reason, end of turn spells wear off in the cleanup step, but they wear off and then the triggers that would happen from in the cleanup step, then they go off.
Yeah, it's like the draw step. Like everything that happens at the beginning of a step that the game does automatically, that all has to happen before anything else can happen. So like that's why people would Vendilion click on the draw step.
Right, yeah.
No one cares about that.
No one cares about Vendilion click.
No one cares about that. We didn't even get to Bolas' Citadel or Gwenum today yet.
Yeah, those are different cards, and you use Sensei's Divining Top with them, and they don't put them in your hands.
Gwenum is more popular now, I think, because of recency bias.
Yeah.
But basically, the way that these work is that you can cast spells off the top of your library for life based on their mana value. Gwenum's a little bit harder to do because you have to set up a scenario where you can attack with Gwenum, but even if Gwenum does not deal combat damage or is removed at any point, her effect is still continuous throughout the rest of the turn. And like you said, it uses Sensei's Divining Top so that you can draw a card with Sensei's Top, put that back on top of your library, and now you can draw a card for 1 life. So it's like build your own Necropotence with 7 mana worth of cards.
I think the main thing to note when playing with Bolas' Citadel and Gwenum and these type of effects is that you actually have priority after you cast every spell. And you are allowed to look at the top of your library at any time. If you have one of these effects in play, before you pass priority, every time you should be casting Demonic Tutor, hold priority, look at the top card of my library, and then deciding, do you want to also cast that card that's on top of your library or not? It's just like free information and free shit that you get because you are just allowed to. So then you can be in a situation where you have several things on the stack and it's much more difficult for your opponents to interact because they can't counter all of it.
There's an insane Gwenum scenario that I set up in a game kind of recently. I don't know where this is going, so I don't know how much I should talk about it, but I was able to put Necromancy and Entomb on top of my library, and when you can just respond to Necromancy with Entomb and put the card that you want to Necromancy into your graveyard right away, like those are the kind of windows you can create for yourself.
Necromancy doesn't target because it's not an aura and doesn't work like Animate Dead. We learned this out.
So weird how all of those reanimation spells are all different.
A little different, yeah. But yeah, that's the main thing to think about with Bolas' Citadel is that you get to look at any time. That also means that if you're resolving a Tainted Pact, you get to look in between exiling cards with Tainted Pact with the top card of your Bolas' Citadel. So you exile top card, you can look at this card and then leave it there and still keep the card that you have exiled prior with Tainted Pact. Largely irrelevant, but it's just like a little bit of extra information that you get to have.
Because you'll be able to cast that top card then with your Bolas' Citadel. So like it's just the information's one of the strongest things you can have.
You know
in
what's
cEDH.
next as you're going with the Tainted Pact.
Yeah, and the main weaknesses to Bolas' Citadel and Gwenum is that
2 lands in a row.
2 lands. Yep, 2 lands and you lose. You have to pass.
Yeah. We like these strategies a little bit less in cEDH because unlike in Vintage, number one, we don't have Tinker or we don't have Moxes, free Moxes also.
Also true.
So we have to play a little bit more land ratio than those decks that play Bolas' Citadel would.
And Goblin Welder is so bad when 2 other players have to take turns before it gets no summoning sickness.
Right, yeah, I agree. So those cards are a little bit worse, but in my opinion, Necropotence is the GOAT. It's the best one. It was not the first one, right? Because Yawgmoth's Bargain was technically first, or was... I should know my Magic history.
I think Necropotence was the first one.
Was it the first one, and then Yawgmoth's was the fixed one?
Bargain. Yawgmoth's Bargain didn't come around until Urza block.
Isn't it weird that Yawgmoth's Bargain is way worse than Necropotence and it's banned in Commander? And Necropotence isn't.
It's worse?
I think it's worse.
You get the cards right away.
It's 6 mana.
Yeah, it's 6 mana.
It's
but
a
like
6 mana sorcery.
I guess, yeah. It's a big
It's like Peer into the
enchantment.
Abyss. It's good. I'll play it.
It's way better than Peer into the Abyss.
It's way better, yeah, but it's still like... I mean, it is good. I can't argue it's good.
It's not as abusable with the tools that we have now, but like...
It's about as good as Ad Nauseam.
Necro's a 2-card combo. This is still a 1-card combo. It's better than Ad Nauseam because it draws you more cards than Ad Nauseam.
But it's not instant speed, and it's more than Ad Nauseam.
Ad Nauseam is more counterable.
Ad Nauseam is more counterable because of
But
Dispel.
it's more. But Ad Nauseam not being a thing that's in play is also better. Yawgmoth's Bargain is worse than Ad Nauseam. Fuck. Okay.
I think it's worse, dude.
Well, where do you rate Treasonous Ogre on this list?
Nowhere.
I put Treasonous Ogre on this list because I'm so
paying
used
life
to
for resources.
I'm paying life for a resource, and I'm casting like 5 spells off of it.
Treasonous Ogre is the best of these effects, for sure. Thanks so much for watching. If you'd like to support us directly, you can do so on Patreon, like our $100 patrons.
Finks MTG, Wandering Around, Tom Peberg, Cumulative Upkeep MTG, Nathan Cohen, Mr. Derby, Okie Toad, Penguin Man 0089, Eli the Magic Eye, David Newman, Johnny Denver, Omelet, Rocky Hall, Pat Fires, Frogman, Spangler, Demetrius Clark, Larceny, Rory, Zorboy Blue, Sparky B, Insomnia, S.E. Phillip, Olden Groupie, Zach Hartley, Big Legs, Banjo, Reactive, Sean in the Ice, Gilbert Garrett, Mace the Ace, Luke Cook, Connor Sipon, Joshua Day, Cornell Wild, Uncle Butts, Nooch Quadjay, Hamid, Scott Hawk, and Baby G-Buzz.
If you want to pick up any of our merch, you can do that at playtowinmtg.com.
Thanks, Dragon Shield, for supporting the show. Use code PlayToWin5 at our affiliate link down below for 5% off.
Follow us on the internet for more content.
Thank you for watching.
See you next time.
I'm not Nathan. Mike H, Mick Saucy, Max McCober, Meta, Ben Finelli, Jason Brooks, Safarius, Ash Wayne, Dan the Man Sarcastic, Mystic Muffin Man, Zachary Coulson, Dalton Poteet, Jan Wildfang, Thomas Bueno, and David Nelson.